Hello, welcome to the Urban Income Podcast. On this episode, we had Karan Wadhera, who is the managing partner at Casa Verde Capital, where he leads a team across investment, strategy, fundraising, and portfolio management. Karan sits on the board of more than 10 cannabis companies across the CV portfolio and select strategic partners. Karan spent over a decade in Asia as a senior executive in Goldman Sachs and some other companies. Fun fact, in 2008, Karan placed Snoop Dogg, yes, Uncle Snoop, in his first Bollywood film. This was a fun, wonderful episode. Check it out. Karan, thank you for joining the show, Urban Income Podcast. And I gotta say, you're super busy, and so it gave me a lot of time to do some research on you, and just listening and watching you speak is very, very entertaining. And you know a lot about this space. Obviously, you're a VC. So would you just introduce yourself? Because we like to hear people talk about themselves, because obviously I could read a bio about you. But in your own words, why are you a legend?
Why am I a legend? I don't know if I would call myself a legend, but I'm Karan Wadhera. I'm the managing partner of Casa Verde Capital. We are a fund that invests largely in the cannabis ecosystem. We think it's one of the most compelling, interesting industries of our generation, and we're thrilled that we can play a small part in its development.
Got it. And you're currently based in California, I believe. And so,
yeah,
but you're a global citizen. So you spent time in Hong Kong, India. Tell us about your background, where you're born, and then do you think any of that has influenced your success in
Sure. So I'm ethnically Indian. Both my parents were born and raised in India and New Delhi. I was actually born in Abu Dhabi, which is in the United Arab Emirates, which is where my parents were working. And then we moved to Boston when I was about 6 years old. And that's largely where I was raised through college. And then from there, largely due to work, I moved to New York, San Francisco, Hong Kong, India, and now Los Angeles. So I've lived all over the world, spent about a decade in Asia. I definitely think my gender and nationality and background, ethnicity more, right? I'm American, but has influenced a lot of my life. I think, there was a point where I was really keen on getting back to India. Not that I've ever lived there, but I felt like it was important. I wanted to be part of that story and wanted to have the country be part of my story more than just being, like I said, ethnically Indian. So I spent 7 years living in Mumbai, and I think that was really important for me. And then, I grew up in like a very white suburban part of Boston where, 99% of the people around me didn't look like me. And also I was, the son of immigrant parents. So even their expectations were probably deeply rooted more in what, the expectations were in India, as opposed to sort of, maybe everyone in the US. So, that was all played a big role in my kind of worldview and outlook and wanting to be accepted. And then also understanding what it meant to be unique and different and embracing that more. So it's definitely been a journey, but, I'd say now I'm at a place where I feel pretty confident in who I am.
That's amazing. And then, so, fun fact, you brought Snoop Dogg to the first Bollywood film. So how does that even work? And I realized that you've known him for years.
Yeah.
And now you're partners in Casa Verde Capital, which is your
right.
firm, right?
So my career before Casa Verde was sort of two paths in parallel. One was really traditional in finance. I started at Goldman, then, was at another a firm called Nomura, spent about, 12 years in that space. But then in parallel, and even predating my time at Goldman, always been really active as an entrepreneur and investor. And so the first business I started in college did new media consulting for record labels and artists. Now record labels are just one big new media business. But back then, it was still primarily, CDs and whatever else, and they didn't have a digital strategy. And I started working with them while in school and helping them develop that, which, by the way, was, very basic in today's terms of what I was doing, but at the time, was differentiated. And so I started working with record labels and artists, and Snoop ended up being one of the first people I started working with. And so through that, we, developed I guess for me, more or less a lifelong friendship. It's been over 20 years that we've known each other and been friends. But that took many different sort of avenues together. So when we were when I first started working with him in college, it was to help with his record label and all his different initiatives. When I moved to India, I helped place him in a Bollywood movie. It was the first time anything like that had ever happened. A hip hop artist in a Bollywood movie, and then doing a song together and becoming one of the bigger songs and movies that year in India. It was now in retrospect fairly groundbreaking. And then we stayed close and started talking about investments and things that people were approaching him to put money in. And it was to his credit and his manager at the time that in 2014, 15, when cannabis was beginning its legalization wave, starting with Colorado, that they said, hey, this is an industry we want to be involved with, and what are the different ways we could get active. And so they had a few different paths they were taking, including this idea of a fund. And when, they approached me about it, it sounded incredible and too good to pass up. And so, that's what I've been doing for the last 7, almost 8 years.
Yeah, amazing. And even just looking at your portfolio and sort of from the outside in, outside looking, you are investing across the value chain, right? From biotech to finance, you've got media in there, compliance at the top. So it's just incredible, to your credit and all of that. I think you're very sticky, and the brands that you've got in there are very sticky, and then solving some incredibly hard problems right now, especially in the media space, because we run Growth Skills is my company. Urban Income is the financial media platform from a media standpoint. But we launched Flavor Fix, which is the first site that caters to cannabis, CBD, and alcohol, and it's information. And just spending some time in the industry, you see that the need for some of what you're offering, right? So I spoke at MJ BizCon in Las Vegas, which is one of the largest B2B cannabis conferences. And first of all, I thought no one would show up. The place was packed. And then specifically in the marketing forum, I was so surprised and honored that you've got some real serious business professionals leading forward, trying to solve the fact that they can't spend, money on Google and Facebook and these platforms to try and actually reach the audience, right? Twitter just opened up a little bit, and they're having these things. So you've got some very sophisticated companies that you've invested in that are doing this exact thing. So do you want to speak more about some of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we launched our fund, we decided that we would focus much more on the ancillary businesses, so technology and services that support the broader industry, rather than too much focus on operations like growing or manufacturing, dispensaries, et cetera.
Right.
And the reason we did that was twofold, right? One, being ancillary protects you from a lot of the issues when you're sort of dealing in the licensed business. So it was a little bit better. You didn't need to spend as much money to get operations going than you would for, let's say, cultivation, which requires land, licenses, equipment, and lots of labor. And so we thought it was more scalable. And then to your point, yes, there are just so many challenges that are so specific to cannabis that traditional, businesses can't solve. So to what you said, all the advertising channels that, if I were just a sparkling water brand, I wouldn't have the same issues if I was, manufacturing gummies. And then beyond that, I think what we noticed was there was a huge opportunity because the traditional folks weren't in a rush to start coming in. As you mentioned, Twitter now, after, many, many years, has decided to take the first plunge and step forward versus, their counterparties. And so I think all of that made it really appealing for us to really target that part of the value chain and say, what can we do to help e-commerce, to financial services, on the compliance side, on the staffing side, on the marketing side? There's so many areas that are so relevant. And I think that was how we differentiated ourselves as well. We weren't just doing everything. We were pretty focused on this support piece. Now, as we've grown into, multiple funds and raised a lot more money, that's allowed us to also to venture out of just focusing on ancillary and seeing where are some of the interesting operating opportunities as well. And so for us, that's a large part of that has been in Europe, where we've seen some really exciting opportunities as their legalization wave starts the same way as ours did about 10 years ago.
And then, so are you going to focus and still double down on cannabis? So, for example, I was talking to Jason Renczak. He's the Raznik. He's the founder of Benzinga, and 100%, finance, all that. But they run one of the largest cannabis investment conferences too. But they have multiple, sites that, there's a Spanish language cannabis site and so on and so forth. So, do you ever tap into finance, or are you focused on in cannabis?
Yeah, I think it's really important to be focused. And I'd say our focus is pretty big. The cannabis industry has gone from a few $1 billion, $30 billion just in the span that we've been a part of it. So I think there is a tremendous amount left to do. We have dabbled in what I would call sort of cannabis adjacencies. We've made a small investment in a psychedelics business. We've looked at sort of manufacturing businesses that could be applied to cannabis in the future. I'd say if you stay within the realm there, and I think there's a potential for a huge tectonic sort of shift in what cannabis' role in society is. If you compare it to alcohol, we're still a nothing business globally, which is a good comp. Similarly with tobacco or pharma or wellness, there's huge chunks of industry that we can go after. So it can be tempting sometimes to lose focus or look outside your sort of lane, but I think it's important for us to remain on track.
No, that's amazing. And then even the connection with alcohol, you see Constellation Brands and those, they're buying into the cannabis companies. And just from a behavior standpoint, some people like to get crossfaded. They like some weed and they like some wine. And that's what we've seen, that's what we've seen from our data and our platform. One of the things too, how do you shake, or is there any more? Are you finding the stigma of cannabis and anything like that? Especially like my mom. So my grandmother is Rajasthan. She's from Rajasthan, and so we're Guyanese. So she's half Indian, half black. And this when they're like, yeah, we're launching this information media platform. She's like, Lavan, you're selling dope. It's like, no, information, mom. And and the thing people don't really realize is that we get a lot of information on what people search, different search volumes for keywords from Google, right? So it blew my mind how many people search for the strain names. Some of these strain names have 90,000 monthly searches in the US, 110 monthly searches in the US. It's enormous volume. And if you rank for a portion in the top 3 positions of that of something that gets 90,000 searches, you're going to get a portion of that as website traffic, and then that turns into e-commerce or a lead, whatever you're trying to capture, right? So when I saw that, I was like, I'm in. There's no other industry that I've seen that has that volume, and so that stigma thing is just people are interested, and the more legalization, they're going to be like, I don't care. I want this plant because it heals me, and that's going to increase. But how are you seeing the stigma side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has reduced dramatically, even in my sort of 7-8 years in the industry. I'd say there's a lot of anecdotal ways to gauge that, right? In terms of telling people what you do, which, when I first started would would sort of initiate chuckles, to now, just head nods and wanting to learn more, to, how like people like my parents or the community thinks about the space. I think I grew up in Massachusetts. That's where my parents live. As they saw legalization take place where they live, and then they heard their friends talk about how they're thinking about it or utilizing it for their pains, and then other friends thinking about how to invest, it quickly turned from something that maybe you weren't, publicizing, to something that you would openly speak about.
Right.
So it's been really fascinating to watch. And I'd say I'm in a huge bubble living in Los Angeles, working on like a cannabis venture fund. I feel like it's completely removed.
Yeah.
But I would say, even as I travel and meet with, conservative, sophisticated investors, I think you'd be surprised at how many people have real interest, whether it's purely economical, or they have a story. And the story can be as simple as a recreational alternative to alcohol, or something they use for sleep, or, in certain cases, something to manage pain for, whether they or someone they're close to is recovering from cancer or chemotherapy. I mean, there's just so many ways people utilize like this plant,
Right.
that it's, I think the stigma really, really starts to shift when you attach that personal story. And I think more and more people are really seeing that happen.
Amazing. You know what I also found too, like working in this industry compared to the others that I've worked in, you see that people are really friendly and want to work with you and together. Even if you're like maybe competing on something, they don't really care. It's like and this is also like, we launched Flavor Fix. Master P's people reached out to talk about 520, which is the Cannabis Freedom Day that he created, the movement to really push against, to help free people who are incarcerated for like tiny amounts of weed. And then I thought it was fake. So we replied, and they're like, yeah, he'll do an interview. And then we just started talking. When I saw the 520 thing, I was like, wow, this is really, really incredible.
Cannabis Freedom Day is real 520, and it's about education and bringing awareness. When you have people locked up for a plant that the system is selling now, we have to focus on more harsh criminals.
Absolutely.
And it's also about helping Black farmers understand the culture, how to make money, how to grow. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and we're not benefiting from it. All we're doing is smoking.
Right.
And we want to change that narrative.
I love that you're starting this with a purpose that's bigger than
this is a movement. This is bigger than us.
And so, but it not, so that's that one just wild level. But then when you go to the conferences, everyone is just open, willingness to work, to exchange ideas. And I just think it's just unique and refreshing. And then, so you're doing a lot. What are you most proud of, that you or your investments have done, the brands that you've invested have done? What are you most proud of?
So, I mean, I think, I guess I'm most proud of what we've built right here. On a very personal side, we've funded some 30 plus companies, created thousands of jobs, and we can see the visible impact of everything we do all over the world. Right, you can't walk into a dispensary without us having had some impact or touching that store or the industry overall. So I'm really proud of that, and to have played a role in this burgeoning industry. I'm obviously super proud of our entrepreneurs. This is not an easy industry to build a business in, and it comes with all sorts of issues that we have to face on a daily basis. And so it takes real perseverance to stick around and stick through it. And so I'm in a blessed position, right? The entrepreneurs are the real sort of stars of the show in our world, and we just get the opportunity to give them some some support in helping to build fantastic businesses.
And what, from a diversity standpoint, what are your brands? What, I think you're big on that too. What, like, top two things that you guys are doing to push social equity?
Yeah. Well, it was something we all had to like really look in the mirror and think about what we're doing, over the pandemic and from all the, fallout with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. I think, we made it a really important to prioritize, the evaluation of, businesses founded by, BIPOC founders. I think that became really important. I think we also made a real commitment that, we would put priority from a recruitment standpoint as well, for the same community. And then doing what we can, in terms of, donating annually to causes and folks who are doing a good job. And that's just what we do on our level. Of course, when you take it down to our companies, it's much more involved. So whether it's companies like Dutchie or LeafLink and working with groups like Last Prisoner Project, to, we have a great business called Banks, which is a staffing and recruiting business, which is, looking to continually support and educate when it comes to both, underrepresentation, from communities of color or LGBTQ communities, and working towards, inclusive industry. And then even brands, on our side, like Miss Grass, which is a cannabis brand that focuses, particularly on female consumers, devotes a big part of their platform to feature, content around, equity and, donating purchases to nonprofits for certain months. And so I think it's important. We all realize that there's a huge disconnect between the people who have been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs and those who are benefiting from it now, as legalization happens. So trying to bridge that in any way we can is very important. And obviously, even at Casa Verde as founders, we're all people of color as well. So it all resonates and hits home.
That's amazing. And so for anyone not listening, Dutchie is basically like Drizzly. Your people could, this delivery, right, of cannabis.
It's like I would describe it as like, some combination of like Shopify and Toast, and also like a Drizzly, in that it facilitates e-commerce. So that could be both pickup and delivery,
right,
for dispensaries. But then but Dutchie now is also the largest point of sale business in cannabis. So
wow.
what you're interacting with when you walk into the store and exiting as well, that's now obviously a big part of their business as well. So
amazing.
Yeah, it's a big part of the cannabis industry.
Would they ever get into alcohol for doing this exact same thing for distilleries and those types of brands?
I don't think so. Again, there already is an existing framework, but you never know. I think that the important part is a lot of what the point of sale does that's specific to cannabis is a lot of the compliant reporting back to the government.
Right.
And so as and when that happens with alcohol, it could certainly make sense. I think as new industries come online that are highly regulated, we could also be there. But again, to your earlier question, right? I think everyone is just hyper focused.
Right.
But yes, the ability to take what we've learned and what we've built and apply it to other industries is certainly there. It's just, do you have the resources and bandwidth to dedicate to that while you're also solving, a lot of the issues in the cannabis space?
Absolutely. And so what advice would you give anyone trying to break into the field and get into cannabis? Because I think there are a lot of talented people, especially they've lost all sorts of tech jobs right now. I think space needs that talent. And I think if you get in here fast, you're going to, reap the reward.
I think what people will realize once they try is that, again, sort of referencing your earlier point, like we're fairly open-minded and receptive industry. We're going through our own struggles as anyone is right now in this sort of macro environment. But I'd say like it's a lot easier to get us on the phone or set up a meeting. I think there are going to be many jobs created in the cannabis industry. And that's one of the reasons we invested in as business banks, which is the largest sort of staffing, recruiting, sort of HR tech platform for the space. Because that's, one of the most important parts of it is getting people, into the industry.
Right.
So they are a great place to start for anyone who's thinking about, coming into the industry is visit them at VANGST and look them up. Otherwise, in general, there are a fair amount of, community events that are happening in cities around the country. Always a good place to sort of show up and get to know people. And like we said, we're always, in general, as an industry, looking to bring more and more great talent into the mix.
Yeah, and so that's amazing. And so you're a successful VC, entrepreneur. You went to Babson, which is the number one entrepreneur school in the world. What habits, for people listening, we're trying to, on Urban Income, we're trying to get them into very good habits and learn the skills to earn, save, and invest. And so what good habits do you have or routines that you recommend others has led to this level of success?
I think the biggest thing I did that really started helping me think about money was starting to invest pretty early on. Basically, right as I left college is when I first started investing. So, I was working at Goldman Sachs. I was on an equities floor. We're talking about stocks day in, day out. And it felt kind of crazy that I wasn't doing anything myself. So, we opened up accounts internally and started actually buying into these businesses that we were super excited about. And I think that it's a very scary thing to do initially, just like parting with your money in any way, right? For the hope to get more later is scary, no matter how risky the investment is or isn't. But that first step, I think, helped. I think what I would have done differently is I wish I had made like a real plan of what I was doing. It was a lot more ad hoc, and I was lucky. I did well. I made some money, whatever. But, I think there's a lot of simple things you can do as soon as possible, even when, you're in high school or earlier, the minute you start earning any dollars, which is to start, even just putting it into the market, a simple ETF and, continually having a plan there. What I did was kind of like swing for the fences at different moments, as opposed to having something a lot more just conservative that was also there. And I think the reality is every portfolio, every person needs to have like a good mix that works for them. And so I'd say that's one of the things that, I wish I'd done sooner or kept doing, because the earlier you start, the more, leverage and flexibility you build in for yourself. And, when you reach a certain age, that's what you're really looking for.
Got it. And as you matured in your investing, what sources of information did you learn from? Was it like a couple books, apps, any podcasts? Where did you learn?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say, I read a lot when I was younger, and that was much more around wanting to understand markets. So, reading, Warren Buffett books to a lot of biographies on entrepreneurs. I was really fascinated of understanding how people did what they did. And it was a lot harder to figure that out when you were younger. Whereas today, I mean, there's just, including this podcast, right? Just infinite resources to learn from. You don't have to leave your couch, and you can sit and listen to some of the smartest people in the world talk about a host of subjects. And so now, every moment I get, I have, 100 episode queue ready to go for podcasts of things I want to listen to. I don't know if I'll ever get through it, but I think that's where I was able to do it. And then look, real learning only comes from doing and executing. Really, you have to lose money, you have to make money, you have to take risks, you have to start a business. Like there's no education like, actual, utility of being in the field. So I would I would highly recommend, where you can and people have the ability to, any small thing you can do towards learning, working, mentorship, internships, etc. That's the real way to get a sense of what's possible.
Absolutely. On that note, if anyone listening to this is there and they has a desire to want to either mentor or mentor, be a mentee of you and your wonderful company or the businesses you invest in, is that an option, and how would they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a website and a contact page. That's like the simplest way where you can communicate with us, and the entire team is on it, and we look at it every single day, and it comes right into all our inboxes. That's the best way, just so it's not being directed at one person, and anyone can sort of pick up on it and be helpful where they can. Reach me on LinkedIn, or the program I was mentioning earlier on sort of like the mentorship that we have, and is something we call community. You can go to community or email community at Casa Verde Capital. Any way you'd think you'd see us sort of online, we are incredibly responsive and active. So happy to be helpful in any way we can.
And if someone wanted to pitch you, how would they do that? And then on top of that, how are you getting deal flow? Like, how are you finding new and founders to talk to?
Yeah. So look, same avenue. We have the same sort of page you would go to on our website is there for people to sort of fill out information about their businesses and send it to us. That is a great way to do it, because we pool and store and report all that information, and it's organized in a way for us to digest it really quickly. And also, it requires some level of effort, which is what it should require if you want to pitch someone and ask for their money. So I think that's one venue, and the best, no matter what, and it's difficult, obviously, is obviously there's a more connection to us, right? I'd say we've done this analysis as to sort of where our portfolios came from. You would be surprised. There's only a handful, but a few have been completely cold, and some of our biggest investments, believe it or not. And then the others have been, through some, warm lead, whether from the existing portfolio or an investor or someone in our sort of, community. And what I would say to that is, while if you don't have that connection, that's kind of a frustrating thing to hear. But again, doing the work to get connected to us or one of our sort of warm connections and reaching out and try to set up a phone call or doing anything like that is just the step it takes to make it that much more likely. But yeah, that's generically how we've been sort of sourcing deal flow. We've been in the space now for 7-8 years. We have a pretty robust network. So I'd like to think we see, if not every cannabis deal, hopefully most of them.
Got it. And then just a pro tip for anyone listening, there are tools like Seamless AI where you could sign up and basically find anyone's contact information. So if you're trying to pitch a VC or anyone in the world, basically use a tool like that, Seamless.ai, and get their information that way. And then, so any advice you would give back to your younger self about like how to be successful faster? Any words?
I mean, I'm first trying to get into the Seamless AI now. I didn't realize you can get anyone's contact information. That's going to help me too.
Oh, we need to talk. We need to talk. Hey, I'll send you some stuff, and I'll show you some stuff, because yeah.
That's cool. I'd love to see. Look, I'll tell you something that has been really valuable to me, and it's really simple to say, harder to do, which is to keep, burn as low as possible in life where you can. We all want to look for ways for more passive income and increase revenue here and do whatever. Amazing if you can do it. But another way is, if you keep your lifestyle as light as possible. Again, it's just so much optionality. I don't think I would have had the courage to, jump into an industry like this and and leave my job and, kind of go without income for many years if I hadn't built up a little bit of a nest egg and done that primarily by keeping my spend and burn low. There's a balance. The idea is not to not have a fun and great life. That's important. But, if you can live in a smaller place or, all these kind of like major expenses, if you can keep them lighter and have the ability to keep burn low, when you transition into something that's higher risk and potentially with less or even no income, trying to transition out of a high burn lifestyle to a low burn lifestyle is very difficult. And it's like, whereas not needing to transition from that at all and already having been low burn is just really helpful from a mental standpoint. So for sake of definition, meaning like just keeping your expenses as low as possible.
So I was going to say that. So what Karan's talking about is your income versus your expenses, and everyone's saying earn more money. But if you actually manage what you spend, that's a huge way of doing this. I was literally talking with Beth Peretta, who's the founder of Peretta Autosport, yesterday on for the Urban Income podcast, and she told me this story because I was like, how do you like do this audacious dream of starting like your racing team? And then she built the first female Ford racing team, and I met her last year at the Indy 500. Wow. Mind blowing. The whole thing is just insane. So she was like, Val, first of all, I listened to my parents when they told me about expenses, like about all of this, and I was like, I didn't, so I hate that. And then she was like, I sold my house, I downgraded, I managed my burn, I managed my expenses very, very low, give me the ability to actually build my dream and go at it. And she's like, I still drive this car, 8-year-old car that's paid for, but like, that's it. I don't care. And she's like, that sort of habit and behavior and thinking.
Yeah.
What mind shift.
It's so undervalued because we're like, especially in America, we're in such a consumer driven economy, and we're just being sold and marketed to and made to feel less than if we don't have a certain car or apartment or watch or clothes. It's ridiculous, and it's a very, I don't by any way proclaim to be that that's easy to do. But if you're a young person, right, and when you leave college, I mean, you're happy to sleep on a couch and, do whatever. Like you're already more accustomed to the low burn lifestyle when you're younger. So keeping that going as long as possible without obviously, shutting off your friends or anything like that, I think is just so helpful. And it's something that's like in our control, right? I could want to make 3 times as much money as I make now. Right. That's easier said than done, but I can, if I choose to reduce my burn by, 50%, it would be hard and it's challenging, but you are actually in control of your ability to do that, where otherwise sometimes it's much more difficult.
Yeah. I think that is probably one of the best points, that we can make. It's the control. You can't control a lot of things, but you could control what you spend, right? And and even take it as far as building your own personal budget, like you would build for a company or whatever you have to run.
And to that point, right? It's applicable everywhere.
Right.
Having that mindset is so helpful if you're trying to start a business, if you're trying to assess a business, et cetera. And even now in this moment where, even as VCs, our focus has turned much more to sustainability, endurance, profitability than growth, which it was for so long. Grow at any expense. That is not where we are today.
Yeah.
And it's an important lesson because it always comes back to those fundamentals, right? A good business is one that earns a lot more than it spends. And for so long, we've been living in a world where these companies are being valued more and more and more, but at the same time burning tremendous amounts of capital. So it's a lesson we all have to relearn at times too. So and I'm no different.
Yeah, and I think the one of the last points we'll make is that you can start at any time. It's not too late. So start now, take it serious, and find we have pillars about earning, saving, and investing, but that saving, that lowering your expenses is probably the most important. And I think everyone's like, get a side hustle, do this, do that, do that. But like, yeah, the smartest thing I've heard in a long time is on the keeping your burn low. So that's amazing. I'll leave you with this last question. If there is one person thought we would benefit, our audience would benefit from being on this show and dropping gems, who would it be? Who should we use to say hi in cold outreach?
I mean, there's so many amazing people, if you want to hear about like, hustle stories, even within our portfolio, we have a fantastic entrepreneur, Carson Humiston. She, built Banks, the business I talked about earlier, complete scratch, bootstrapped right out of college, and has, now built like a really incredible organization and has learned tremendously along the way. I think she's like a really strong example of, there's no like particular path to any of this. It's just how dedicated and motivated you are, and being ready to like hustle and take risks. And so she's awesome. She's a great entrepreneur, and someone I think would be really valuable to hear from.
Amazing. We'll have her on the show.
All right. I'll connect you.
Amazing. I appreciate that. All right, Karan, it was fantastic. This has been fun. I definitely want to show you some stuff around those keywords because I think all your portfolios would benefit from that. And it just awesome. My mind was like, wow, what? I had no idea. Please share.
Very cool.
So, yep, that's it, everyone. Bye. Thank you for watching and listening to this episode of the Urban Income Show. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on social, and visit urbanincome.com.